I've definitely learned over the last year that I'm better to outsource stuff and really focus on developing my skills, being a better practitioner, giving more time to my patients, doing what I love, which is in clinic. And that's definitely been a really good learning over the last year.
Welcome to Acupuncture West London, the podcast. This is the podcast for students, practitioners and enthusiasts of classical Chinese philosophy, Chinese medicine and acupuncture. I'm your host, Ben Carrigan, coming to your ears all the way from London. So join me as we dive deep down the rabbit hole of Chinese philosophy and into the very concepts that inform our practice. Each episode focusing on a specific topic and its application within a clinical setting. This episode is brought to you courtesy of our brand new ebook, Yin and Yang. What are Yin and Yang? What are the laws of Yin and Yang? And how are they used as defining principles for our very existence? To answer these questions and more, download your free copy at acupuncture-westlondon.com/free ebook. Welcome to episode 9. So today we're continuing with part 2 of my conversation with Emma Eaton of the Cobham Acupuncture and Reflexology Clinic. As part of our A Year in Business series, Emma is talking us through a year in business and setting up her own practice. If you haven't already checked out part 1 yet, go back and check out episode 8. There's lots of good stuff in there. Let's get stuck into part 2. I spoke to Rachel on day 1 of the considerations and outlays of setting up from home. Then I spoke to Vicky yesterday, costs and various models of setting up within an established clinic. And so in terms of setting up your own clinic, obviously there's a lot more to consider. So what are some of the things that you've looked at in terms of initial outlays, having to get practitioner licenses, practice licenses, any restrictions,
Yes.
Things like rent, all those kind of things?
Yeah, I think because the room that we used was at the top of a gym, or the first floor above a gym, there was already a lot in place. It wasn't like I was fitting out. It was already a treatment room. It was a newly refurbished treatment room. So to be honest, a lot of that had already been taken away from me. It's not taken away from me, but I didn't have to worry about it. There are things, and also I had a really lovely landlord insofar as I would say, oh, the waiting room's not looking great, and he would pay for it to be refurbished. So in terms of that, I didn't really have to pay an awful lot. There are some things which surprised me that I had to pay for, and this sounds like I've become slightly obsessed about signage. I probably have, but I don't know. So we had to have signs that all matched with the other treatment rooms. I don't know. Then there was a sign outside the clinic, an outdoor sign, and that cost a fortune. And then it kept on getting broken. I think I probably paid about £1,000 in signage by the time I finished. By the time I'd done the indoor one, and then the one on the door, and then the one outside that kept on getting nicked, which I eventually had to get Ali, the kebab man, to show me CCTV. And it turned out it wasn't nicked, it was the wind.
Ali, the kebab man, just for the record, is from the grill next door.
Yes.
Neighbour, yeah.
So it just all got a bit crazy. It's stuff like that you just didn't expect would cost any money. And suddenly I was just hemorrhaging on signage.
There I was moaning about leaflets the last few days, saying how I found them to be useless because they were out of date as soon as I had them in place.
I know. Yeah. I know, but people love a leaflet, don't they? I don't know.
They do love a leaflet.
They love it to have in the bottom of their handbags and never use.
Yeah.
Write other people's numbers on.
Exactly. So how did you decide on pricing in the clinic?
So, like I say, when I was at home, I was things changed. So I think when I started, I did a little review of who was around locally, and it felt like I was about middly, and that felt about right, not too much, wanted to make it accessible. Then when I started the clinic, I in Cobham, I was really keen to keep it accessible. I guess I was nervous. I was a bit like, are we actually going to have anyone? We've got quite a lot of rent to pay. I've now got 4 mouths to feed rather than 1 in terms of new patients. So I kept it pretty low. I'm not sure I would do that again. I think you have to really kind of deconstruct why you're keeping it low and make sure what your priorities are. And obviously, if you're specialised, you can pay a little bit more. But I try to keep it competitive. I think I would probably, if in hindsight, I'd probably think a bit more about that. But would I change anything? Don't know. It got me lots of patients that I could get really experienced with, and it got me busy very quickly, and I was able to make a living out of it very quickly. I was knackered.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? I think, like I say, you have to do your pricing in line with where your head's at, what your clinic is, where you're at as a practitioner.
Yeah, and to look at people around you. And one of the things I was talking to Vicky about yesterday is just, it's easy to price yourself too low going in. And by doing that, you're sort of undervaluing yourself. But also, I think people, if they go to your website or they look at it and they see something that's too cheap, it's like that thing of people, sometimes it can turn people off as well. So you're better off being in the middle of the pack as opposed to being at the bottom.
I agree.
If you're ever in doubt.
And do you really want the people who are coming because it's good value? Are they committed?
Well, I hear about people all the time who give discounts, and people will come. Yeah, I know. I'm very anti 20% off and stuff. I think I tried it when I started out my clinic, but all I had was a huge kind of tsunami of people coming in, getting their discounted treatment, and then never see them again.
Yes, which is just heartbreaking on every level.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say has worked really well in the sense of setting up the clinic in comparison with the other models or the other ways you've worked?
Well, I was really lucky. I got to work with really fantastic people. I mean, definitely you guys kind of helped me raise my game in lots of ways, which is what I was looking for, and other ideas.
Likewise, yeah.
And I think we became, an amazing little team. So I think that worked really, really well. I loved driving to work. I know that sounds sad, but it's only, 10 minutes away. And I loved it. I loved getting in the car, and I loved coming to work. I didn't love humping all the stuff back and forth, I have to say. So I like everything, yin and yang, you've got your pros and cons. So, but I did love that. I loved being kind of part of the Cobham community. I loved the status the clinic gave me. I liked that. Yeah. I liked the fact that I felt I'd progressed. So they're the things that I think worked well. I was lucky. I did have a really lovely landlord, and I think that made it good. I think one thing I did really struggle with is not having full control. I always used to quote Pretty Women, when they say, I say who, I say when, I say how much. And I think that was an adjustment I hadn't quite allowed for, because when I was in somebody else's house as such, I had to kind of work with them, and they could determine the Christmas opening hours, or, so we had some issues with noise, for example. So when I first took the room on, I was absolutely over the top about noise, and it was actually a yoga studio that had been split into two. And I can't tell you how much I rammed home the fact that wall between the two rooms needed to be soundproof. And to be fair to the landlords, they really honoured that, and they made it really soundproof between the two rooms. But what I hadn't quite counted on was noise rising from underneath. So my first kind of week in there, I suddenly realised we were underneath the weights room, and everything was really pounding. So, and I couldn't control it, and that's very difficult when you're in a situation where you can't control that, and it's your business and all of those things. So one thing I just wanted to ask you about was, we spoke about leaflets, and we've spoken about posters and signage, which Irish people are terrible at signage, by the way, just for the record. Go to Ireland, you'll never find your way anywhere. Good to know. It's costly, that's why. And people steal the signs. I think they're very right. Yes.
What of any other advertising have you taken out? Or has it just been mostly signage?
Yeah, no, the signage. The whole theme's going to be signage. So for me, things that have really worked, I was lucky enough to get a good relationship with a lady who ran local magazines, and she came and did an editorial piece on me. So she came for a treatment and I helped her with her elbow, and she was great and wrote amazing things. And that definitely gave me a certain type of patient. So, people that perhaps weren't so much online, more elderly. And I that really did give me a massive boost, and it was free apart from a few adverts subsequently.
Okay.
So that's definitely been useful. I had, as you know, some real success with a Facebook advert, which I'd never done before, in January. And that was very much, health is the new wealth, which, if ever there's been a lesson in that, it will be the last few months. So that was great. And I think, but really referrals. I mean, if you've got someone, or good old Facebook referrals, I mean, it makes my heart sing when somebody says, does anybody know on a local group a good acupuncturist? And then if your name comes up 5 times, you must be doing something all right. So I would definitely say, just be good at what you do if you can, and treat people nicely. Be nice.
It's always
that's
a plus,
free.
isn't it?
Be good at your job, and hopefully people will come.
Yeah, absolutely. You seem to have quite good success with Facebook ads and getting people in the door that way. I personally didn't find that worked at all.
I think I got really lucky on the timing. So I would love to say it was a real coup and I should therefore be a marketing guru, but I basically just had a bit of time at the beginning of January. And I decided, in fact, my daughter was at a netball camp and I sat in the coffee shop and was able to do some work for a few hours. And I just created a very generic ad that I think, because of the timing of, post-January and everyone's excess Christmas, we just got really lucky. And I think then it kind of snowballed, really. I was lucky that a few people saw it and then they came in. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I've tried to do a few in the past, but the content has probably been a little bit too long or something. So I think the key is just to keep it simple.
I haven't done so well on targeted ones. So I did do a fertility one and that hasn't been as good. So
really? Okay.
That didn't really do as well. And I think I did a pregnancy one possibly. I did a menopause one and that didn't do great at all. So it was really just the generic one at the beginning of the year that worked really well.
Okay. So in terms of online presence and stuff, obviously we have social media and websites and whatnot. I know you've worked quite hard on the website over the last year. So how's that been?
Well, I won't lie. I was always slightly arrogant about my IT skills because I did a lot in my previous corporate life, like I project managed systems implementations, but I'm really rusty and things have changed a lot and I perhaps didn't realise. So I actually have an amazing lady in a different country that I literally send my stuff to and say, make it magic. And she does. And I think when lockdown happened, I got very right, I'm going to be the one who does this. Don't want to spend out, blah, blah, blah. But really, it was painful and it was terrible. And I think she charges something like $15 an hour for some of the changes. And to be honest, it's the best £12 or whatever it is that I'd ever spent, because her hour is mine 3 weeks with a lot of swear words and vodka.
There's a lot to be said for that. And also, because you're using WordPress as well, aren't you?
Yes. And Divi, which is the front end builder. And it was just horrific.
Oh, it can be. With WordPress particularly, if you're using something like Wix or Squarespace, which is quite user-friendly for people who don't know how to run websites, but something like WordPress is quite a steep learning curve and you can easily break your site. We've talked about this before.
Oh my God, so easily.
I've broken my site so many times and I've had to call up the host and go, you have to help me. I've done something to my HT doc or something.
I don't understand why they'd give us so much power. Why would they let us be able to break our site? That was the thing that I couldn't really get my head around. I was like, why are they letting me have access to a situation where I can actually completely cock it up?
I know. And it's so easy to do. You update a plugin or something and the whole thing just falls flat and won't let you log in or something. And then you're just like, oh, it's the most horrible sinking feeling. I don't think there's anything worse.
I've definitely learned over the last year that I'm better to outsource stuff and really focus on developing my skills, being a better practitioner, giving more time to my patients.
Absolutely.
Doing what I love, which is in clinic. And that's definitely been a really good learning over the last year. So much so I've actually got a lady on board who's so I'm kind of rebranding for the new clinic from September, and I've got a lady on board doing my branding. I've got a lady on board who's going to start doing my Instagram stuff. I've got best reception that are answering my phones. We haven't really touched on it, but I'm using Timely.
Let me ask about that, actually. Sorry, no, not to interrupt. I wanted to ask you about third-party and online resources. This was exactly my next question, so you're kind of leading into it. Basically, I'm a firm believer in making less work for myself. And if it costs me a little more money, I'd just much rather have the extra time to do something else. So I know when you're starting out, people are trying to keep their costs down. But I think one of the best things I ever did was early on just say, you know what, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to get myself a clinic management software option. And the two I was looking at were Clinico and Timely. I use Clinico. I've used that since I started. And then you use Timely. But what has been your experience, or how much easier has it made it for you?
Loads better. I mean, I only really shifted. So I used before Setmore, which is quite antiquated these days, but it did a great job when 4 or 5 years ago, mainly on the text reminders. I mean, that just helped so much. But I started using Timely February time this year, and it's been really quite life-changing because I used to do the confirmations, the email confirmations, all of that. And I think it's about 25 quid a month or something crazy.
Oh, this is for Timely or for Setmore?
Oh, Setmore was about £12 because it had quite limited. Timely's about 25 quid.
Yeah, Clinico's 29, I think.
And I got to a point where what with the virtual reception, if somebody could ring up, because one of my challenges was I was in clinic all day. I'd come back to, 4 missed calls. I'd just finish in clinic, and then I'd have to ring those people back. Whereas with the virtual receptionist, they answer on your behalf and they can book people in, and then Timely sends them an email confirmation. Boom! I don't touch that patient at all until they walk through the door, which is just, makes my heart sing.
I know. It's probably the best thing I've done, because obviously I use Timely through working in the Cobham Acupuncture and Reflexology clinic with you and Rachel and Ali. And then I had Clinico for my own clinic in Southfields. And they're both slightly different, aren't they? I mean,
yes.
I think from using both of them, I would suggest my own opinion that Timely is probably a little sexier looking.
Definitely prettier.
It looks good on the patient side because you get logos in your automated emails and whatnot. But they're both as functional as each other, and they both maybe have slightly different ways of working or slightly different pros and cons. But the good thing about them is I think for anyone starting out, you can get a 30-day free trial of either just to try it and have a look around and without having to pay for them. So they're definitely worth just signing up for.
Oh, definitely.
And trying them out, even if it's just for 30 days. I guess the only thing with any of these things is once you're kind of hooked and they have everything in their system, then I don't know how easy it is to get out. So it could be that kind of luring you into a subscription that I don't know, but I haven't got that far yet.
It wasn't too bad because I transferred from Setmore and it was just doing a database load and then upload, and they helped me with that. So,
oh, that's great. That's good to know.
You can flip between them I wouldn't, because that's time. It takes a long time to set it up, really. But if you were having problems, I think it's like everything's slightly limited. There'll always be something that you wish you could do that you can't. But it's been great, and just taking that admin out, like I say, to have that kind of smoothness. And to be honest, even with the virtual receptionist, it's probably about a patient a month it costs. But you've got to remember, people just ring round, don't they? And everyone loves immediacy these days. And the thought of, I would probably miss at least 2 or 3 new patients a month because I didn't get back to them quick enough. So it's already, and that's just on their first visit, it's paid for itself. So even one patient that you capture that call from, it's paid for itself.
Yeah.
And that's only on coming once, whereas we want patients to come back and see, not forevermore, but you want them to see the improvement.
Absolutely. And in terms of having a landline for your business, all those little shop window things make a big difference, I think.
Yes, the reception service I use, the guy who owns it is brilliant, and he really helped me with that. So I don't think he even charged me for a landline, maybe 40 quid, I can't remember, but that's my number forevermore. The other benefit to that is that they can't send texts cancelling. So that's the other thing is that I had a mobile number on before, and we had this situation where people would just shove you a text saying, oh, my head's fallen off, I can't come. So I think it's really helped with cancellations because they have to speak to a human being. And,
that's good.
And the receptionist can say, are you aware of our cancellation charges? Because that's another thing I've had to really just get hot on because, again, it's all a bit boundaries, and it'll be interesting seeing the shift back to a home clinic because I know before when I was at home, it all became, probably my fault, became a bit fudgy, a bit like, oh, I can't make that now. And, you're like, oh, it's half an hour before. Whereas a clinic, I think people did get that you were paying rent. So in something in their heads, they were a bit more like, I can't just cancel. But we'll see. I need to get a little strategy in place to make sure that that's robust enough going forward.
It's tricky with cancellation policies because I've mentioned this before to Vicky and Rachel the last few days, but I am quite strong about cancellation policies. But I feel like I can justify it because when people book, I make it very clear. It's on the confirmation page on the website. It's in their confirmation email. It's in the reminder email saying, please give us 24 hours notice. At the moment, obviously, I'm kind of being much more flexible because if people ring me and saying they have symptoms of COVID-19 or coughing or spluttering, obviously I'm not going to enforce it. But it does come down to a courtesy thing, and it does kind of piss me off when people, like I've had a few people who just don't show up. But since I've been clear about the cancellation policy, I think I've had 2 people in 6 months who didn't show up, and it was the same person. So,
yes, I know. Well, definitely, I think what's the shift for me since I've been hotter on it is that people offer to pay if they don't come. So it's rare that I've had to, and I've accepted that. So if I've had multiple, I have about 2 or 3 patients who are super talented in what their field is. They're super creative. I think one's a photographer, one works in the film industry, another one works in TV. Their lives are chaotic. They are chaotic. They don't always know where they're going to be. So I do really try and be flexible, but there comes a point when you're like, well, hang on a sec, I'm actually losing cash. And if it gets to a point, if you have 3 or 4, especially if you've got 12 in a day and it suddenly gets down to 8, you do the maths. It's like, well, hang on a sec, I'm just hanging around. This is a lot of my income gone. I know Rachel, I think she charges for the first appointment up front. And I have to say, I think that's a really good way forward and actually one I'm going to adopt, especially in post-COVID land, because you're having to invest the time typically on Zoom beforehand. And the last thing you want is them not actually rocking up after you've done like a half an hour Zoom consultation. So that I definitely will be looking at that going forward.
So with something like Timely, for example, because I know Clinico don't allow you to do this yet, do you have the option to charge people up front?
Yes. I need to look into it, but yes, you can. I think it's just the only problem you have to be careful of is what percentage they take for their pay partner.
Who's their pay partner? Is it Stripe or?
Yeah, it's Stripe. It is Stripe, yes.
Yeah, because I use something like iZettle because it's simple, but then I would like to have something that just sits comfortably within whatever service I use. The less I have to, move things between 2 different options, the better.
Absolutely. So that's definitely something for September I'm going to bring in. I think the good news is post-COVID land, I think people are going to get it. I think that we can't be the fluffykins anymore. We've had a period of time where we haven't been able to work, and you can still be very good at your job and still deserve to be paid for it.
Absolutely.
I think that's okay. You can still be caring and give people a good experience. But again, comes back to these beautiful boundaries. They need to know that this is a business and you love them dearly, but you're not doing this for fun.
It's true, because I was reading an article in the British Acupuncture Council magazine a few months back, and it was all about, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was about a guy saying that far too many of us are apologetic for running a business or trying to be too business minded, because I guess there's this slight guilt with some people that it overshadows our ability or want to care for people. But in my opinion, it's so misguided. And, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of by trying to make yourself as successful as possible in anything that you do. It doesn't have to be at the expense of others. You know, I mean, I care about my patients. I think about them all the time and how I can make things better for them. But I still won't apologize for wanting to make money and wanting my business to be as strong as it can be.
I agree. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. I think.
No, exactly. I think that's the point.
I think one of the things I think of often, well, two things. The first thing is I think, how much do consultants pay do you pay a consultant for 10 minutes, which won't really help you in comparison to the life-changing that we're doing on a daily basis for 45 minutes. So that's one thing I kind of sort of feel okay about the good work that we're doing. And also I think, well, look, if I don't have a business and I don't make money from this and I'm not allowed to survive, then I can't do a job. I can't do my job. So I can't help other people. So in order to be able to help as many people as possible, I have to be able to live. And this has to be able to be my job.
Exactly. So to go back to the clinic management software aspect, and my favorite thing, which everyone has loved me asking the last few days, is about the fact that many of us are not built for doing accounting and tax returns. No. But this is one of the bonuses of having software like this in place. Timely, have you linked it up with anything else or any other option that works?
I haven't. I use QuickBooks, and that's definitely kind of, I guess, limped me through the last two tax returns. I think
I'm sure that's what the tax man wants to hear.
When I say limped, I mean obviously making sure that everything's as it should be.
Limped correctly,
as required legally. But I really feel I need an accountant going forward. So I am going to go down that route. I'm very tight and a cowboy. So that's what I mean. I don't like to pay for things, but I've definitely changed my mind over the last year or so. So I do need to get an accountant on board. Because I can't just keep kind of not making it up, obviously. That's not what I would do with my taxes, Ben. Oh, no.
If you'd like me to cut this bit out later, that's absolutely fine.
That would be great.
No problem. Okay. I feel like you're leading yourself into a hole. I can't help you.
Emma's now sadly incarcerated.
So maybe one more main question I wanted to ask you before we wrap up.
Okay, cool.
And that is, obviously over the last year, and particularly over the last couple of months with COVID-19 and everything, we've seen, I can only think of the word unprecedented, which you didn't want me to use earlier. We're living in unprecedented times.
We're doing COVID bingo.
COVID bingo, yeah. So extra points for me. So yeah, we're living in difficult times at the moment, and you've obviously had to be really flexible with your business and decided to close and move home for the moment. What have been the pitfalls or the main lessons that you've learned from setting up the Cobham Acupuncture and Reflexology Clinic? What might you have done differently? And what have the main lessons been over the last 12 months?
I'm not sure I thought about it enough before I went into it. Like I say, I think I kind of had this idea and I knew what I wanted to do. And I think I really always wanted to run a clinic. And I think I really wanted to itch that scratch. But I think I perhaps didn't understand about the loosening of control by being a tenant. I perhaps didn't really take on board the fact that working with other practitioners, whilst amazing, you have to be collaborative in your approach. So it wasn't always that easy to be as nimble. So, for example, we had to have a debate about price changes, and we had to be aligned. So there was a lot of things that we all had to come to an agreement on.
Yeah.
And I perhaps hadn't quite appreciated that there would be a loss of control in kind of two levels. So from being somewhere else and from working with other people. It has a billion good things about it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But I think I'm not sure whether I was very clear on the model. I think I was kind of finding it out as I went along. possibly making it up as I went along. And I think that's okay, because I think you have to do a bit of that. But I think I probably would have had a bit more of a plan going into it.
Okay. Because I would say that, obviously I know we had all those discussions about price changing and you feel like you had to align with us or communicate with us. Personally, I think you were very generous in how you approached us with your plans, and you really listened to all of us for what our thoughts were. Whereas I think other people might have been much more, maybe not listened to people as much, or they would have just gone ahead and done what they did.
Dogmatic, is that a good word?
I wouldn't even use the word dogmatic, because I wouldn't see it as a bad thing. I just think you listened to us more than most, maybe, which is really nice for us. But I'd obviously hate to think that it was something that held you back, because I think, I wouldn't want to have affected your own business model.
No, definitely not. I don't think it was that. I think it was more, I hadn't appreciated the time it would take. I think that's probably a better way of saying it. I think keeping everybody updated on I was very used to being kind of a lone wolf. And that I didn't like that. I really didn't like that. And I loved being part of a team, but I perhaps hadn't appreciated how much investment that took to make it work really well. And we did work really well, and I loved it. And I wouldn't change it. But I think it's interesting when I think about reopening in September, I feel sort of nimbler, and kind of, but I don't know, but that comes with cons of being on your own. And so there's no blooming perfect answer, is there, Ben? I think that's where we're getting to. But I think is my top tip for new people starting out is make a list of what's really important to you. So is being able to get out of the house important to you? And, is being with other people important to you? And then rate it, rank them. And then you can kind of decide which model suits you best. And I don't think I ever did that. I kind of had a gut feel that I like to work out of the house. I kind of had a gut feel that, I like to work with people. And that was absolutely right for me then. But I think if I was to write my list and rank it again, things like financial security is coming a little bit up higher there. Not hemorrhaging money on rent is coming a bit higher than there. So it's just, I think that's just decide what's really important to you and keep changing it. Because it's okay. You're gonna change, and as a practitioner, you're gonna change. Situations are gonna change. Just keep re-ranking, and that's
Absolutely.
okay. But make sure that where you are is fitting with your new rank. Yeah.
Well, it's true, because I remember 3 months ago, we've obviously been working from one room, but we were also talking about expanding into the next door room. Then within 3 months, we're looking at closing. So it's really a lesson in adaptability, isn't it?
It is. And I was hanging in there. I won't lie.
Yeah.
I really didn't, we talked, our next Zoom was all about COVID safe. So I was very, very ready to open, and I was on deadlines and I've invested quite a lot in changes to the website over lockdown. So it kind of came as a bit of a left field as a decision for me, as well as everyone else. But it was kind of doing the sums and getting the Excel spreadsheet out, and it was just the uncertainty. And
of course.
I just felt like, how am I going to do this?
How
are we going to, and is it going to be about getting them in, or is it going to be about being a great acupuncturist? And I worried with the uncertainty it was going to be more about getting them in. Yeah, of course. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me and chatting through all of the different ways that you have worked through the years at the various levels. Oh, thank you so much, Ben. I really enjoyed it. I hope it was all right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Since recording these episodes, I've had a number of messages also asking me to look into other working models for acupuncturists, most particularly working as a mobile practitioner. So I do plan to do this in the near future as part of this series. I'll also be looking to delve further into the realms of online promotion, SEO, backlinks, and the black hole that is internet marketing and visibility. So stay tuned for that one too. Thank you to Emma Eaton for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more about Emma, check out cobhamacupuncture.co.uk. For questions about today's episode, do drop me a line at podcast@acupuncture-westlondon.com. Lastly,
Don't forget to check out the show notes at acupuncture-westlondon.com/podcast, where you can also find more info on free trials and discounts for lots of clinic management solutions we've talked about in this episode. See you next time. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review. To keep up to date with all of our upcoming episodes, sign up to our podcast newsletter. By doing so, you'll get your very own copy of my brand new ebook, Yin and Yang. Check out acupuncture-westlondon.com/free ebook. See you next time.